The crazy thing about that whole day is the kick itself really wasn't that impressive. I've taken harder shots in cheap gyms and bad alleys, but that one sloppy boot to my shoulder on a sunburned training field in Ridgeview County turned into the moment a whole department found out who they actually had on their knees in the dirt in front of them. 1 second I was just another non-compliant suspect in their little show. The next second their big sergeant was on the ground screaming while his leg bent in a way legs were never designed to bend. And all those rookies suddenly realized this was not the lesson they thought they were about to get. From the outside, it probably looked simple. Black woman wrists tied behind her back, surrounded by uniforms and mirrored sunglasses made to kneel in the grass, while a man with stripes strutted around and used her as a warning sign. But inside my head, it felt like somebody had finally taken their hand off a switch they'd been leaning on for years. My name is Nia Carter, and depending on who you ask, I'm either that mouthy woman with a chip on her shoulder or a retired asset the government worked very hard to erase from its memory. You know what I mean? People see what lines up with their story, not the chapters you had to crawl through to get here. The sun was already high and mean that morning, thick heat pushing off the ground. They had me on my knees in the middle of the field, rope cutting into my wrists, boots making a lazy circle around me, while a line of fresh uniforms watched from the sideline like it was some live tutorial. Somebody up the chain had decided my little argument at a traffic stop made me perfect for a compliance scenario, and nobody thought to ask if maybe there were better ways to spend a training day. Sergeant Bradley Cole was the star of the performance, thick-neck aviators, that slow swagger that comes from too many years of nobody telling you no. He paced in front of me like he owned the grass. His voice turned up just enough for the rookies in the back to hear every word. "This right here is what happens when they think they know better than you," he said, chopping his hand toward me like I was a busted cone. "They argue, they resist, they get hurt simple." A little wave of nervous laughter moved down the line, that sound people make when they want to fit in more than they want to think. And I'm kneeling there thinking, you really picked the wrong woman for this sermon. I kept my head down, not because I was ashamed, but because I was working, counting his steps, listening to how his voice moved when he turned, feeling where everybody was without having to look. My breathing slow while they painted me in their heads as panicked and dangerous old habits from another life, waking up whether I liked it or not. Back when my days were measured in missions and extraction windows, not tickets and court dates. "Look at me when I'm talking to you," Cole snapped, and his hand clamped around my jaw, fingers digging in just enough to hurt, not for control, but for the show. He yanked my face up toward the sun so the rookies could get a clear view of the problem they were supposed to learn from. His breath smelled like burnt coffee and cheap mints, his voice all fake, fatherly anger. "Where'd that attitude go, huh? You think you're tough now?" Behind him, I could see their faces lined up, some smirking, some already checked out, one kid with freckles and big eyes who looked like he wanted to melt into the bleachers. I didn't give Cole what he wanted. I just stared at him and let my face go quiet. No fear, no apology, nothing. He could turn into a neat little story later. Meanwhile, somewhere in the back of my skull, that machine I thought I'd dismantled years ago was quietly warming up, gears sliding into place one by one. Back in the days, they called me Spectre 13. In files, you needed 3 clearances to open, the kind of name you only get if you've done things far from home and far from the rules. Now I was just Nia with the attitude on his paperwork, and honestly, I was happy to keep it that way. But ego loves an audience. He squeezed my jaw tighter, leaned in so close I could see the red lines in his eyes, and said loud enough for the furthest rookie, "You think talking back makes you special? Sweetheart, the only thing special today is how bad this is gonna hurt." His thumb pressed into my cheekbone. His knee lined up perfectly with my shoulder as he shifted his weight. He had no idea my body was already mapping all of that without asking. I could feel the rope fibers softening with sweat, feel the knot give a little each time I adjusted my balance while they laughed. I was counting heads and angles. When I finally spoke, my voice came out low and flat, so soft half the line probably missed it. "Move," I told him. One word, no extra decoration. Not a threat, not a plea, a forecast. The freckled kid's eyebrows jumped like some part of him heard the warning in that single word, but Cole just laughed and tossed it back at me for the crowd. "Move. The only thing moving here is you, sweetheart." Before the echo of his own joke faded, his boot came up in a big, lazy arc and slammed into my shoulder. Pain lit up my left side, my body rocked, my cheek hit the dirt for half a heartbeat. The rookies made that long "ooh" sound like they were watching some fight video. But in that same heartbeat, my knee hit the rope at just the right angle, and I felt a few important fibers snap. I could have stayed down, swallowed the anger climbing up my throat and let them finish their little scene. But with my face pressed into hot dirt and his laughter rolling over me, I knew I was done pretending. I pushed up like I was just trying to get steady again, rolled my shoulder into the motion, twisted my torso a little farther than I needed to felt the rope give again, not enough for them to see, enough for my hands to matter. Cole stepped in for his second act, reaching down like he was going to shove me back on my knees in front of his class, and that was the moment. The part of me I had been ignoring all these years just said, no, we're not doing this. The world narrowed the way it used to, sound going thin, time stretching just enough to fit a choice inside. And I pivoted on my left knee, swung my right leg around and hooked it behind his, used his own forward weight and a sharp twist of my hips, and there it was, that ugly dry snap of bone going where bone doesn't go. He hit the ground hard, air and curses blasting out of him. His leg folded underneath him at an angle that made a couple of rookies gag. His sunglasses went one way, his hat went another, and all that I'm the boss energy evaporated in a single second. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Even my own thoughts went quiet enough that I heard the wind. Then everything crashed back in, shouting, "What the hell?" Hands grabbing for holsters that suddenly felt real small. I pushed myself all the way up, shoulder screaming, cheek-burning rope hanging off one wrist like a bad joke, and stepped past Cole without rushing, looked down at him, clutching his leg like he could hold it straight with his bare hands. "I told you to move," I said, not loud, not smug, just putting the timeline in order. Two more officers rushed me from either side, one yelling, "Get her down!" like I was a wild dog that had slipped a chain big guy's decent speed, absolutely no idea what they were really running toward. The one on my right reached high for my shoulders, so I slipped just outside his line, grabbed the vest of the one on my left, and used all that momentum as a gift, turned my hips and took him down into a twist. His knee was never built to handle. There was another sharp pop, higher pitched than the first, and suddenly I had two men on the ground clutching legs and shouting. Two legs broken less than 10 seconds from the moment I finally decided I was done being their example. Yeah, that happened. There is no joy in that, and I need you to hear that part. Hearing grown men scream in pain does not feel good when you still have a conscience. What I felt in that moment was this cold, tired anger that they had dragged me back into a version of myself I was working hard to retire. That the lesson they wanted to give their rookies was never about de-escalation or respect, just about who they thought they could hurt without consequences. I looked up and saw the rest of them now, guns halfway drawn, sweat on their faces, pupils blown wide, all that "we own this place" energy gone. "If you want to keep walking today," I told them steady and clear, "step back." Some of them did fast, like their bodies listened, even if their pride didn't. That freckled kid took one quick step back that probably saved something important in his future. Others tried to stand their ground because habit is loud, but even they shifted like the earth had moved. The lieutenant pushed through them, older, more stripes, hands up, voice smoothed out. "Ma'am, let's not make this worse," he said. "We can talk this out, just relax." But his eyes kept darting toward his taser, his baton the far edge of the field. "You're lying," I told him quietly, more tired than mad. "I can hear it in your feet." That threw him just enough that his heel slid a little, and I used his own step against him, took his wrist, turned his weight, and set him on his back without breaking a thing, just letting the breath leave his chest in one long woof so he would understand how much worse it could have been. I dropped into a crouch between Cole and his partner, heat coming off broken bodies and sun-baked dirt in waves, their pain and their shock thick in the air. "You don't know what you're dealing with," I said softly, "but you should have listened when I said move." And that's about when I heard it, that thin mechanical whine cutting through the shouts. Looked up and saw the drone sitting in the sky above us, camera aimed right at my face, at the rope, at the two men on the ground, and the ring of officers around us streaming every second into some system that knew my bone structure way too well. A few minutes later, the deeper engines started up on the far side of the field, tires chewing gravel as a new line of vehicles rolled into view, doors popping open in a rhythm I recognized in my sleep, and I knew even before I saw the suits and the heavier gear that this situation had just left the world of training scenario and wandered straight into my old life. Those engines rolling in were different, low and heavy, and every local officer on that field straightened like a principal had just walked in. Darker uniforms, heavier gear, and then one black SUV eased to a stop and a woman in a suit stepped out, no badge in her hand. But everybody moved out of her way without being told, and I knew her before I heard her voice. I knew it. she said, coming closer. I told them you wouldn't stay hidden forever. Hello, Elena, I answered, and that was enough. Agent Elena Ward, the last person to debrief me before I vanished, looked from my face to the rope on my wrist to the men on the ground. So this is how retirement looks, she said. They kicked first, I told her, and I warned them. The drone above us twitched like something bit it, its whine jumping, and I watched the color drain out of her face in a way I hadn't seen since the old work. Her hand went to her earpiece. Who else is on this feed? She asked, and the silence that came back told both of us what we needed to know. She looked at me jaw tight. They piggybacked the signal. Naya, your old unit is watching, and you know they don't come to talk. Somewhere beyond the trees, a deeper rumble started, that low, steady sound you feel in your ribs. Elena stepped closer. We don't have long, she said. They're not coming to arrest you. They're coming to erase you and anybody standing too close. I looked around that field, at the rookies who'd laughed and the ones who hadn't, at Cole and his partner gripping their wrecked legs, at the freckled kid who looked like his whole idea of the badge was cracking. And I felt that old bitter joke rise up, because once again I was about to stand between danger and people who hadn't exactly earned it. But I also knew what would happen if my old team rolled into that neat open field and found a crowd of uniforms around their favorite loose end. They would not see brothers, they would see obstacles. So I lifted my hand and every face turned toward me like I'd been the one in charge all along. Listen to me, I said, and nobody talked over me this time. If the people coming for me get here and see you standing tall, yelling and waving guns, you're not going to win. You're not going to die, heroes. You're just going to die, and some report is going to call it a tragic training accident. The freckled kid swallowed. So what do we do? He asked. You stay down. I told him, you stay alive and you remember this day every time somebody tells you people like me are always the problem. Elena's fingers brushed my arm. You sure? She asked. Not even close, I said, and I actually laughed. But since when has that stopped me? I turned toward the trees, felt every eye on my back, and started walking, then jogging, then running, my shoulder aching, my lungs burning, but my legs sliding back into that old rhythm of running toward one danger to pull another away. The forest swallowed me in shade and branches, and behind me I heard the engines shift and follow off the safe open field and into the mess of trees where I know how to disappear and how to fight. Maybe I walk back out, maybe I don't, maybe I go right back to being a redacted paragraph. Someone opens by mistake. Maybe one of those rookies becomes a trainer and tells this story different, so the next woman on that field doesn't have to bleed to be believed. I don't know, but I do know this. They thought they were kicking down just another loud, difficult black woman, and instead, they woke up a legend. They had worked very hard to forget the part of me that remembers exactly how I was built and exactly who I refuse to bow to. If you're still here with me really listening, I want you to sit with something. When you first pictured me at the start of this story, before you knew about Spectre 13 and old units and black SUVs, who did you think I was? Just another problem who should have kept quiet, or somebody who maybe deserved a little respect before the first boot landed? And if you had been standing at the edge of that field, would you have laughed with the others, looked away, or stepped in? Drop it in the comments and be honest. Tell me what you think about power and prejudice and how fast some people will put hands or boots on a body they don't think the world will believe. And if you've ever seen anything like this, someone underestimated, roughed up, written off because of how they look or where they're from, tell that story too, because the more of those we drag into the light, the harder it is for anybody to pretend they don't happen. Hit. Like if this hits something in you, share it with somebody who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss whatever comes next, because my story with Ridgeview County and with the ghosts driving toward that tree line is nowhere near finished.